Welcome everyone to my review of Assassin's Creed Revelations. As most of you probably know, this is the fourth game in the Assassin's Creed series and the third game featuring Ezio. This is also the final title featuring him, so let's examine if it does a good job at finishing off his story. Firstly, I want to talk about the story. This, for me, has always been one of the Assassin's Creed series' strong points. So obviously Revelations had quite a high standard to live up to when I started playing. You know, as I mentioned in my characters video, I feel that the story from Assassin's Creed 2 is really good, and all of them are pretty awesome, but Assassin's Creed 2 is my personal favourite all round, as well as in terms of the story. Obviously, I'll do my best to avoid spoilers and stuff in this review, but if I have to mention something spoilerish, which I don't see happening, but you never know, I will give a warning beforehand. Anyway, this instalment of the series finds Ezio in the city of Constantinople, otherwise known as Istanbul. Ezio was there to find the 5 keys to a hidden library in Masyaf, which was the setting of the original game, which obviously featured Altair. This serves as the overall arching plot, and, you know, it serves pretty well to drive the main story, but my main problem with it is that there's no sense of threat or any big plot going on outside of this. Obviously, fetching the keys is very important. You know, Ezio absolutely has to get the knowledge hidden in the library before the Templars do. So that's important, but outside of that, there's just no sense of danger in Constantinople itself. And even in the keys thing, there's not really a sense of any threat. You know, even when you're retrieving the keys, there's a couple of close calls where the Templars get there before you, but, you know, it just doesn't feel like it's ever really at risk. It always feels like, you know, you're just going to get there just in time, and that even if they manage to get one, which at the beginning of the game they already do, you would just manage to retrieve it off them anyway. But, you know, that's not even the biggest issue. As I said, the 5 keys storyline does do a pretty good job of keeping the main plot going. My main problem is that outside of that, and with the local goings on Constantinople, there isn't really any threat. You know, Ezio joins up with the local assassins and, you know, everything seems fine. You know, there's the occasional attack on one of their dens from the Templars, but it's nothing they can't handle by themselves. So yeah, that's my main problem with the story. But luckily, the characters and the stuff that does happen are still fairly interesting enough so that, you know, you still want to find out more and explore Constantinople and all of that good stuff. But I still feel that the game suffers a bit from this, especially since I expect such a high standard from the Assassin's Creed series. If this was any other game, I probably wouldn't be this critical, to be honest, but, you know, I have to hold it up against the other games in the series. And even if I don't count the first game, I can easily count Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, because there's the other two that feature Ezio. So yeah, that's definitely a problem, you know, I feel, but, you know, the story is not bad, it's just not quite up to the standard I would expect, that's all. Now, the combat system and controls are still mainly the same, as it generally tends to be with new games in the Assassin's Creed series, but there are some changes this time around, which I quite like. One addition to the combat, which I definitely approve of, is a kind of chain mechanic. I can't really think of any other way to explain it. Basically, all it is once you've killed somebody, if you press the attack button fast enough, you turn around and kill another enemy close to you instantly. So obviously, you know, this gives the combat a nice sense of flow, and also along with some different enemy types and stuff like that, it finally makes it so that just using counter kills all the time isn't the best option, which has always been kind of a weakness. You know, the combat has always been fine in Assassin's Creed, but it's never exactly been what it's known for. And before, you know, you could easily just pretty much counter kill everyone apart from maybe a couple of guys, and that would be it, and you spend the whole game counter killing and maybe disarming and stuff. But in this game there's actually quite a few enemies that, it's actually not the best plan to just counter kill, and with the new chain system it's actually not in your best interest to counter kill if you're surrounded by a large group of enemies. especially since a lot of them have firearms in this game. As well as the addition of the hook blade, which is, you know, a retractable blade that helps Ezio with his climbing, but it also assists in battle with different combos and such. The main new thing in the game is the tower defense thing. Although it was admittedly a strange choice for this game, I actually quite like it. It adds a much needed layer of depth into the capturing of dens from the Templars. Obviously, this featured in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, where you had to capture towers that were being controlled by the Templars in order to be able to control certain areas of Rome and be able to renovate buildings in that area. But aside from being able to renovate shops and such, there wasn't really any other real point to it. But I actually quite like this added mechanic because, you know, if you take a tower or whatever from the Templars, they're not just going to let you have it. They are occasionally going to try and claim it back and stuff like that. So if you let your notoriety get too out of control, they will find out where you are and attack you and try to get their den back, and you have to defend it with the new tower defense mechanic. It works fairly well. Like I said, it was a bit of a strange choice. I wouldn't have expected it to be in there, to be honest. I never sat there and thought, you know what Assassin's Creed needs? It needs tower defense. But now that it's in there, I quite like it. It adds a nice little layer, and although my buildings never became contested all that often, it's still fun to do, and it's a nice little consequence for your notoriety, because before, the other games, the only real consequence of you being notorious is that you were very easy to spot, and although obviously that's a pretty big thing, this is a nice sort of bigger consequence that affects more than just you, so that's definitely nice. As well as finishing off Ezio's story, Assassin's Creed Revelations also shows us the end of Altair's tale as well. These segments with Altair are a tad short, which is a bit of a shame in my opinion, but overall I found them quite enjoyable. I quite like the decision to show us Altair at different stages of his life, and how his character changes as he gets older. The voice actor for Altair is much more appropriate this time around as well, which is a definite plus. Not that anything was wrong per se with his original voice actor from Assassin's Creed 1, but I still feel this voice actor fits his character much better. Desmond though, again, he kind of gets ignored, as he always seems to be the case, but we do get a little more insight into his character this time. There are these strange first-person platforming segments where you have to find your way around and have to escape, and you can summon different type of shapes of platform and stuff to try and navigate your way around. And it's in these segments that you find out a little bit more about Desmond and his history, especially with his training as an assassin when he was younger and such. He's still less interesting than Ezio and Altair in my view, but he's still the most interesting that he's ever been in this particular game, because I always found him a bit bland and just kind of flat, but he seems more fleshed out in this game to me, because he actually seems to have some life in it now. Now, despite the game's various problems that I've already mentioned, I do think that this is a very strong title. It pretty much meets up to the high standard that I hold this series to, despite the issues that I have with the lack of danger presented in the story. I do feel this game does do a pretty good job of wrapping up Ezio's and Altair's story in a way that does them both justice. So overall, I'm really happy with this game, and I'd say it's definitely worth picking up. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time.
More Templars! Look sharp!